You're listening to the Bear in Mind podcast, episode number 101.
A podcast uncovering identity, color, and love, where driving yourself crazy is totally sane and curable. Now your host, T. Vias.
I wanted to say thank you to those that have been listening since the beginning. That means that episode 101 is about 2 years. You've been committed to your emotional health for 2 years. And that's amazing. And so today we're going to be talking about emotions. Emotions 101. And I'm labeling this because actually this is recent learnings for me. And I think it's something that we're not taught when we're raised. Usually we're not taught these things. They're not part of our educational system. And though some countries are trying to make headway in this, we're still, in a lot of countries, lagging behind in looking at things from an emotional health perspective. We talk a lot about this like as emotional intelligence, like as if it's like for leaders and people kind of not what I kind of think just living day to day. And these are some of the things because emotions are so important in our lives that when I learned it and then I got certified as a life coach and then I was teaching it and then explaining it to my clients and just even having conversations with friends about it, all of a sudden people are like, oh, I never realized that about emotions. So I thought I'd share some of those things where people are like, I didn't realize that. And these are all adults that I'm speaking to. So it's kind of interesting how we're not really taught some of these things. So I've got a few things to go through on emotions today. When we can't really describe it to somebody who doesn't understand emotions, like if, let's say you're explaining to someone who has no idea, and we ourselves then have to reflect like how we understand something. That's why it's often harder to explain something or teach something that actually tells you how much you actually understand of a subject. So when I began to teach emotions, that's when I realized, I really don't know a lot. And kind of the easiest way to understand something that seems confusing, it works in most cases, is to look at the origin of the word emotion. And it comes from the French word. And you can already see that there's already one word in there, and that's motion. An emotion is actually movement. And so when we think about emotions, we often talk about, it's our feelings and I feel it. It's almost like it has a understanding of like we're holding on to something, we're holding on to our feelings, when actually emotions is about movement. And the E added to it, it comes from EX as in former or out. So X is from the French meaning it's out. There's all different kinds of meanings, but I'm going to use the word as an out. So when you look at an emotion, it needs to move out. And in this case, actually, I'm going to use the word through. An emotion is about movement in you, in your body. And when you talk about looking at a word from way back when, where a lot of people weren't very literate, they used a lot of visual things, sensations to describe words. So that's why we have this word emotion, because when people felt an emotion, they felt something moving in their body. And that's why there's a lot of expressions in different languages also very related to the body. I can feel it in my gut, kind of like that's another example of that. So basically, an emotion is movement through your body, and that's it. It's if I wanted to get more particular, it's more accurately a vibration moving through your body. And that's what an emotion actually feels like. When you say you feel an emotion, it means you feel it in your body. It's not something that is part of your head, inside your brain. It's the rest of your body. So an emotional experience has nothing to do with our minds. We can think all we want about an emotion, but anything to do with emotions will always be something that's inside, occurring in our bodies. It's a movement through our body. We can feel it in all different sorts of ways, but that's it. And when I tell people that it's motion and it's movement through your body, and I explain this to them, then there's all sorts of questions that come up after it. And the basic next question is what's happening? And this was something also that I didn't understand in the beginning. Like, well, what do you mean, you're having movement in your body? And what's happening? And all that means is that in your brain, in your head, you think something. And there has been a neural pathway that's been generated because you've been thinking something for a while. You think something to be true and you believe it. So, simplest way is like, I really love my parents, I really love my kid. And then when you think about them and you have these thoughts, there's a neural pathway that's been grooved into your brain over time, over the many years you've been alive, that generates an emotion in your body. So that's how it happens. It's through our neural paths. And you just slowly groove it in from the day you're born. You slowly start to create those grooves. And then that's why we have certain pathways that are super fast and can go straight to the emotion before we even know what we thought. And the whole experience of what's happening then in your body is that takes form in your body. It's already left your head, so to speak, through those neural pathways, and then a vibration is sent down through your body. So then when we feel an emotion and it's taken shape in our body and there's a vibration in our body, it feels different for everybody. And, anger can take form in your body differently. Shame does. And a lot of times for a lot of people, I would have to say when I ask them to describe some of the stuff that's happening in their body, is that it happens usually in the chest to stomach area. And that's a very common place, but it can also be in the throat. It can also be in your face. It's not necessarily restricted to that, but that is a very common place where you feel the emotion and sometimes almost like you can't breathe or you feel nauseous or something because of an emotion. And those are the kind of vibrations and movement that's happening in your body. You're experiencing emotion and it if you're not really paying attention to it and conscious and understanding why it's happening, it feels so uncomfortable, right? Because feeling nauseous doesn't feel comfortable. Having someone press on your chest doesn't feel comfortable. So we want to try to get rid of this movement, this vibration in our body as quickly as we can, because often if we're not so in tune and comfortable or haven't learned how to process those emotions in our body, it feels terrible. It almost feels like we're going to die. And that's how I felt a lot of times around shame is I would feel it in my chest and it would come up actually through my throat. And it would almost feel like I couldn't breathe. Like, yes, almost like I was going to die. So you almost don't even want to feel the emotion happening in your body. And you do all sorts of things to avoid it. And so the only way to deal with an emotion that's happening in your body is to let it move through your body. Now, this is where I think, and I'm adding my own take on it, is where the E comes in, the X of the emotion, is that it needs to move out or through your body. And then the emotion, you can be done with it. You won't feel it anymore. And what ends up happening, because I know I didn't learn this, is that I held on to my emotions and I held on to them for a really long time that actually I felt a lot of physical pain. And I used to have panic attacks and it was building up because none of it was being processed. I wasn't allowing it to move through my body because I felt so uncomfortable. And now that I work on it and now that I learn what emotions are and how to process them, I realize that it needs to move through your body. I need to honor those sensations and the vibrations. And I'm going to give you a quick tip on how to let it move through. So the next time you're feeling something is just to sit with it. It doesn't mean you have to sit in the chair and do yoga for 15 minutes. Just sit with it and notice it and breathe through it and see where it ends up in your body. Having it move through means getting out of your head and thinking your way through the emotion. Instead, I want you to go back to your body for the answers because that's where the emotions are, in your body. So going to your head is only going to generate some other kind of other emotions to add on that type of emotion. So if you can breathe through it and just see what's happening in your body and just try to describe what's happening, notice where you feel uncomfortable, notice if there's tingling, tension, pressure, someone's squeezing you, all of those uncomfortable things, and try to describe it as best you can. You get out of your head and you get more focused on what's happening in your body. And then your body can naturally, you can slowly let it move through you. Because a lot of times it can feel stuck, like that pressure, that tension you feel. If you can breathe through that, describe it, and get some movement in it, you are so much closer to processing it and getting it out of your body. So if there's one takeaway from this episode, is that emotions are movement through your body. It has nothing to do with your mind. Get out of your head. It has all to do with your body, and go to your body for your answers to deal with your emotions. That's all I have for you. I'll check back with you next week.
Thanks for listening. Listen for a new episode next Tuesday by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Bye for now.